Hi, everyone. My name is Steve Reifman. I'm a National Board Certified Elementary Classroom Teacher and author in Santa Monica, California. Thanks so much for joining me today. It's a bummer that we can't all be together in San Luis Obispo this year, but I'm hoping that you will enjoy and find useful our virtual EPEW this year. At the bottom of the slide, you'll see my email, my Twitter handle, and my website, and I'll be mentioning some free and inexpensive resources throughout this presentation. So if there's ever anything I could do as far as pointing you in the direction of these resources, or you just want to follow up on something I'm talking about today, please don't hesitate to get in touch. It would be great to connect. First, a little bit about me. I live in Santa Monica, California. I'm a huge Dodgers fan. I'm hoping that this is the year we finally finish the job and win a World Series, even if the season is shortened. Also a big football fan. I spent a great day at Lambeau Field in Wisconsin many years ago. And then I'm also the writer of the Chase Manning Mystery Series for kids 8 to 12, and I also do resource books for teachers and parents. Before jumping into today's presentation, I want to give you a little background. Many years ago, I went to UCLA to get my teaching credential, and it was a fantastic program. And I vividly remember the day my field coordinator told the class that this was the day we were going to start learning about classroom management. And he mentioned that most approaches feature behaviorism, using rewards and punishments to keep the class under control. He also mentioned other approaches based on procedures, but most of what we learned, most of what we saw in our student teaching and our observation, and most of what we discussed in class featured behaviorism. And I was very uncomfortable with that at the beginning. I didn't think that I wanted to have a class where I had to keep everything under control by offering rewards or threatening punishments or consequences. To borrow a phrase that I use with my students now, I didn't want us to be a have-to class. I want us to be a want-to class. And the only problem was I had no idea how to become that type of class where kids weren't controlled or threatened into compliance, but it was a place where they would do a great job because they wanted to learn, they found meaning in their work, they worked with purpose, and they were motivated to do the best they can. Now, as I started, as I said, I wanted to have that kind of environment, but I didn't really know how. And as I began my teaching career, teaching first grade, during my first year, I used rewards and punishments. I didn't do it very well, and I didn't do it with a lot of confidence. It was very uncertain feeling. And I remember one day, three moms wanted to talk to me a few months into the school year. They sat me down, and they were very nice, but they said, "We're concerned about the management in this class." And I didn't want to be flippant or sarcastic because I try not to be that way. But my response was, I am too. Like, I'm concerned too because I didn't love the approach that I was using, but I honestly did not know a better way. And during this time, I was taking a class through the University of San Diego to get extra units to move up on the pay scale. And at the end of a presentation one night, the presenter talked about a book called The Quality School by William Glasser. And I am so happy that I read that book at the beginning of my career because it led to, it was an introduction to a man named W. Edwards Deming, who has become the most influential person, not only in my teaching, but also in my life ever since I read it. He did his most important work in Japan after World War II, helping them rebuild their industrial base. And his work was based on a series of quality principles, which I later applied to education. I've written about them. So reading Glasser's work and Deming's work, and also books by Dale Parnell, Alfie Kohn, started me in the direction of what has become my life's work, trying to create a classroom culture where kids can thrive, not because they're scared of a punishment or they're wanting some type of extrinsic reward, but because they believe in what we're doing and they work with meaning and with purpose and all the things that I originally wanted but didn't know how to do. The most important single piece of paper that I read in any of these books came from Punished by Rewards by Alfie Kohn. It's a set of theories by a psychologist named Douglas McGregor. He did this in the 1960s. Theory X basically says that people do not like to work, and if you're a teacher of a class or the manager of a workplace, or the coach of a team even, the only way to get people to do what you want them to do is coercion, whether that's threatening punishment, offering extrinsic rewards, because if you don't do that, nothing's going to get done because of people's inherent dislike of work and trying to avoid it when they can. Opposite of that is theory Y. And as soon as I saw this, I knew that this is exactly what I was looking for in the type of environment that I wanted. Feel free to pause at any time in case I go quickly because I may not provide enough time for you to read everything on the slide. But the sentence that stands out to me the most here is the second sentence of number 2, when he said man and woman, people, boys and girls, since we're working with kids, kids will exercise self-direction and self-control in the service of objectives to which they are committed. So that tells me that as a teacher, I need to make a great effort at the beginning of the year with my students to help everybody understand why we are here. What are our objectives? What exciting, motivating reasons are there for us to come to school each day to do our best? So I knew that that was a huge piece of the puzzle that I was looking to create. The kids needed to know the purposes of their learning. That'll help us become a team. That'll help us work with intrinsic motivation and joy and all these other things that I was looking for. So I was very excited after reading about Theory Y. Let's move to our session topics. I'm sorry, I thought I removed all these builds. I know they can get annoying. I'm hoping that's the only slide where that's happening. So here are topics today. First, this connects to the part about objectives that kids can believe in and work toward. That if we're trying to build a championship culture, it needs to stand for important things that resonate with all of us. Next, I'll talk about how we can use symbols and rituals to help build this type of culture. Also, recognizing the individual within the larger team concept so we can have a strong team, but we also have kids who feel that they're treated and recognized as individuals within the larger team concept. And then finally, we'll focus on leadership. As far as topic 1 goes, there'll be 3 things I'll be discussing as far as helping us establish a culture. And by the way, over the years, I've stopped using, or I try to stop using the term classroom management because nobody wants to be managed. We don't want to be managed as employees. Instead, I prefer the topic of building culture. So if somebody says, how do you manage students? I quickly try to change the conversation into one of, okay, how do we build culture? How do we build a place where kids can flourish, work hard, work together, and work with joy? So that will start with the classroom aim. Then we'll move into our classroom mission statement and alternatives that you might want to use as a physical education specialist, and then talk about different sets of habits. Sorry. Okay, first, it's so important at the beginning of the year when we talk about objectives to establish a sense of purpose with the kids so they understand why they're there. If we ask them why it's important to come to school, they'll say to learn, and we'll say, well, why is that important? And many of them might say to get good grades or to get into college, but oftentimes they're unable to articulate reasons beyond that. And we want to help them understand that there are multiple purposes that we are serving. And once kids know that, they are more motivated, they're more enthusiastic, and they find greater meaning in their work and their behavior gets better. One thing that I find interesting is that if you think about the organized activities in a kid's life, other than school, if they join a team, if they're on a band or they join a drama club, for example, when they go to practice, they know why they're there. When they are going to a baseball practice, for example, and they're practicing running and hitting and throwing, they know that they're going to be doing those things in the game. There's a very clear connection between what they do in practice and what they'll need to do during the actual game. Same is true for band and drama. We practice the skills that are directly connected to what we'll need to do in a performance. I think the one activity whose purposes are the least well understood by its participants is school, and we need to make a greater effort to do that. So we're moving on with our classroom aim. This comes from a wonderful book that, again, I was lucky enough to find at the beginning of my career called Improving Student Learning by the then superintendent of the Enterprise School District named Lee Jenkins. He said that kids come to school with all the enthusiasm they will need for a lifetime, but they don't have all the knowledge. And the goal of a school should be to preserve student enthusiasm as its most important asset as everybody there works to increase the learning. He came upon this discovery after a few years of giving an attitude survey to all the students, where kids in grades K through 8 were given a ballot with all the subject areas, and then they would either mark happy face, neutral face, or sad face for each one, saying whether they liked the subject, whether it was just okay, or whether they didn't. And the data showed that in kindergarten, it was 90% happy faces. Kids pretty much loved everything. But there was a definite, gradual, steady drop in enthusiasm each year that kids were in school. And what a disaster and tragedy that is, because when you think about the kids in high school, and at graduation, and that's considering only the kids who get that far, because sadly many kids drop out. You're only left with a handful of enthusiastic learners. And when kids lose their enthusiasm for learning, they're less motivated, they're more likely to experience discipline issues, and they're less likely to put their learning to use in creative ways. So the district created something called an AIM, which is a short, powerful phrase that guides the work of the district. So after looking at the results of the attitude survey, Jenkins and company came up with the AIM: maintain enthusiasm while increasing learning. Now, I didn't like the word maintained, so I've changed it to increase learning while increasing enthusiasm. I've used that every year of my career since, over 20 years. Now, when we have that short phrase, that provides focus and direction for our efforts. The aim that, hang on just a sec. Okay, so I've already shared that. Dr. Deming, who I mentioned, said that schools should be places that increase the positives and decrease the negatives so that more students keep their yearning for learning, which is another way of saying maintain their enthusiasm. So I adapted it, and what it does is establish our highest priorities. Now, as physical educators, I strongly suggest that you think about, what are the most important parts of my job? What aim would guide my work with my students? So here's a suggestion that I've gotten from my experiences at EPEW. Sometimes you hear the word preparing. I prefer the word empowering. That the goal of physical educators is to empower students for a lifetime of joyful movement. So it's not just a matter of learning skills for that day or that week or that year. It's not a matter of memorizing content, but it's to learn things that kids will willingly and joyfully apply as they get older so they remain physically active for a lifetime. So I strongly suggest taking some time, either now by pausing the video or later, coming up with what you consider your overall aim for the work that you do. After that, we want to work on something called a classroom mission statement. And if you've been teaching for a while, you may be groaning at this point, and I understand why, because there's a very good chance that many years ago, or even recently, at a staff meeting, your school could have been presented, quote unquote, presented with a mission statement that was prepared by the district, given to all the school sites. Everyone was asked to buy into it, even though they didn't have a chance to create it. And then after some initial fanfare, the mission statement was put in a drawer and forgotten. And if that's your experience, somebody owes you an apology, because I think it is the single most important thing that I do with my students. And I tell them that during the first full week of the school year, that if I was allowed to do one activity with them all year, this would be it, because there's nothing like it as far as building teamwork, establishing an expectation level, building a culture where we can all be happy and thrive. Much of what I've learned about mission statements comes from some wonderful books by Stephen Covey. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is a great read if you're looking for a new book, and First Things First. Now, before I get into specifics, I want to address the elephant in the room, because I am a classroom teacher, and since I'm with the same group of kids for the full day, even though the old teacher joke is that they're not the same kids after lunch, even though that they are with me for the since they're with me for the full day, I have time. I have time to devote to creating a mission statement. And as physical education instructors, since you're likely teaching multiple classes and not seeing them every day, then it's going to be a lot harder for you to do that. So what I want to do is describe the creative process that I use with my students, and then I'll share some ways that you can adapt it. On day 1 of our 4-day process, first full week of the school year, I define the word mission by using the term on a mission. That when people are on a mission to do something, they're trying to accomplish something important. I mentioned Susan B. Anthony, Martin Luther King, athletes that they might know. I encourage them to come up with their own suggestions of people who have been on a mission. And I start that by asking 5 questions that too often in my experience go undiscussed in classrooms, and they are so fundamental to what we do. We need to talk about them. Who are we? Why is it important to come to school to learn? You can see the rest. We just had a little glitch. The slides were not advancing. So what I did was I just stopped. I took the rest of the slides, put it into a new file, and here I am continuing. And the good news is that I got rid of all of the builds. So hopefully that nonsense is finished. I left off with day 1. We ask the kids to answer the 5 questions that I shared. On days 2 and 3, it's important to show the kids actual mission statements from places that they know and like. Because it's one thing to talk about a mission statement, but the kids need to actually see the format. They need to see what it looks like. So over the years, I found examples of mission statements from restaurants, theme parks, other businesses, and I'm always on the lookout for them because kids really love seeing ones that they know. When we look through them, I put them on the document camera in class. I read through them, and then the kids are asked to highlight any words that they think are powerful and convey the mission of our class. Some words are not going to have anything to do with an elementary classroom, but a lot of them will. So this is a good lesson on powerful word choice that convey high expectations. Here are some of the organizations whose mission statements we use in class. It's spread over 2 days. We'll do about 5 or 6 one day, 5 or 6 the next day with my fourth graders. And by the end, they have a whole bunch of ideas highlighted, ready for the next step. So, for example, if we're looking for Southwest Airlines, the kids might highlight the word committed at the top of the second section. Creativity, innovation. This is a good activity to do at the beginning of the year too, because there's no wrong answer. And I want the kids to be comfortable raising their hand and participating. And a lot of kids aren't at first. So because this is pretty foolproof, pretty much everybody raises their hand a lot to share words that they highlight from each mission statement. Here's one from Kellogg's. The last sentence is great. That's the power of breakfast. Many kids have used that's the power of, and then they put in our team name instead so they can easily adapt many of the ideas that they see into the process of writing our own. 3M is another great one. Just tremendous words here. Uncompromising, if you look at the first bullet point under our values, honesty, integrity, innovation, great words that we want to build into the culture of our classroom. The Levi Strauss one is great because the format is it naturally divides up topics into sections, and I like that, and I've used that for the last few years, and you'll see what it looks like in class, especially the bottom part with the short phrases. There's a lot of great things to highlight and a lot of great ideas that we can use in our own mission statement. So that's day 2 and 3. On day 4, the kids actually have a chance to take the ideas that came from the questions they answered on day 1 and the missions they highlighted on days 2 and 3. So the kids have a choice to work alone or with partners or small groups, and then they can either take words from the different sources of information, the questions and the mission statements. They can write individual sentences, and then our most ambitious students will want to write an entire mission statement on behalf of the class. And it's great when I see kids who want to do that. And as long as they answer the 5 questions and is not more than a few paragraphs, then they are in business. Kids are generally extremely motivated for this activity because they see it as an adult activity, and there's no way to get it wrong. What they're doing during this time of drafting is their opportunity to add ideas to the class. Now, once the kids have all done that and we collect their papers, it's a good idea to group the papers together for the kids who worked together. That way, when I look through it, I'm not seeing one student's and then their partners. I'm not seeing theirs at the end. I want to group those together so I can be very efficient when I look through all of them. Now, the final step is to take ideas from every single paper, take what I consider the strongest or most effective ideas from everybody's paper, and put them together into one mission statement that represents the whole class. And that's hard at first because you're either surrounded by so many good ideas you don't know where to start, or you take a lot of ideas from everybody and you end up with a class mission statement that's several pages long. So what I do is open up a file on my computer and I write down each of the 5 questions. And as I look through the students' work, I take their best ideas and I put it underneath the question that they answer so that I'm sure that I'm getting enough information for each question. And I'm on the lookout for ideas and phrases that will serve as powerful reference points. I want these ideas to hold up over time. And sometimes the kids come up with ideas that are not in the mission statements or they're not the answers to the questions. They're ideas that they come up with on their own and they're wonderful. So we want to be on the lookout for those as well. So after we've taken the ideas and put them together into a mission statement, it's important to enlarge it and laminate it. I put it on my classroom door and I make a file for the smartboard that we have so that we can look at it every Friday. When we unveil it for the first time, it's pretty magical. Every student in class will look at the mission statement and find something that came from their paper. There's the recognition that everybody contributed to it. And according to Stephen Covey, he says that in situations like this is when a group of individuals really becomes a team, when they realized that everybody had a hand in making it, and they realized that it's going to take everybody's combined actions for the group to realize its mission. It becomes our class constitution. It's our founding document, and it's important to review it regularly so we avoid the putting it in a drawer and forgetting about it situation I mentioned earlier. It needs to remain a living document. So every Friday morning, we won't read the whole thing through. We only do that the day I unveil it. We'll either look at a specific section, a specific sentence, or even a word, and then we'll have conversations about that. And then later in the year, after we've gone through it a few times and the kids get to know it well, we'll have open forum conversations where I'll point to a paragraph and I'll have anybody who wants say something that's jumping out to them about that part. Either something they think they or the whole class is doing well, or something that quite honestly we're not doing well and we need to work on. So here's one mission statement. I can send you a copy if you want. You can just email me. I'll send you a couple if you want from different rooms, from different years. So I borrowed the Levi Strauss mission statement format, making different sections. I have an introductory paragraph, a section about our work, our character, our expectations, and about our community. And I feel it's really helpful for us and for the kids to have these different sections. Couple final points. Some people look at this mission statement and they say, but that's pretty long. Well, if we work in a retail store and we put our mission statement on a wall, we only have a few seconds to capture customers' attention. But in a classroom, we have all year. So it's okay for it to be fairly long. I wouldn't go beyond a page, but I think a page is perfectly fine because kids are going to basically memorize it by the end of the year. And in addition to the weekly talks, it's important to take advantage of what my friend and legendary PE instructor Wendy Jones calls learnable moments. Anytime something happens in class that we can connect to the mission statement, we want to do that. So in math, if the kids are doing a great job with their partners, at the end of the period, we'll of course go over the math work itself, but we can also pull up the mission statement and say, here's the part where we talk about teamwork and working together. And then I can mention what I just saw, and I can have the kids share compliments for their partners. And that really brings the mission statement to life in a different way. They see that their actions bring it to life. Because a mission statement does represent an ideal. Just because we put a lot of high language, like high ideal language in it, it doesn't mean that it's going to happen automatically. Stephen Covey says that it's the job of the group constantly to be translating the ideas from the mission to the moment. And then if you think about most of the things that kids do in school, they'll either do work by themselves, sometimes they'll work with a partner, sometimes they'll work with a group, but almost never does everybody contribute ideas to one project that represents the class, and that's what this mission statement does. So it's a special thing, and I go out of my way to share that with the kids. Now you see a couple resources that I made that have information about how to create a mission statement of your own with your class in case you are interested. Now, for physical educators who don't have the same time with one group of kids that classroom teachers do, you have several choices. You could make one with each group. It might need to be a streamlined process, but you could. You could do one with each grade level that you teach, or even make one for the whole school to represent the PE program that you lead. Another option is to do what's called a list of beliefs, or what we value, and then I want to share information about a visual. This is taken from a Sweet Green store. They list their core values. This is something you'd be able to do, and it would take a lot less time. You could either do it all at once on a day at the beginning of the year, or maybe at the beginning or ending of a PE period, you can talk for a few minutes about some important aspect of your program: character, effort, sportsmanship. And then each day or week you can add a core value to it until you've come up with a list that can stand as a year-long reference point. I think that could work very well for you. My favorite suggestion for PE instructors is to make a visual. This is something I made with my students 2 years ago. And the idea is that pictures often resonate with kids in ways that text doesn't. So I wanted to work with them to create a picture that captures the most important ideas from our mission statement. And we really love this. First, it views our school year as a quest. That's what the stairs are for. We're trying to climb the stairs and get to the next level. That's where the arrow is pointing up to the right. We want to keep going up until we reach HQ, the highest quality. And you'll notice the sun on the bottom corner, because every day represents a fresh opportunity. No matter what happened the day before, we can always strive for greatness the next day. The kids are not in this alone. We're working together. You see them reaching for each other so that no matter what level any of us is at in any subject area, we can always help somebody along. The light bulbs over the heads remind us that we are all bright kids with great ideas. The lightning bolt symbolizes the energy and electricity and enthusiasm we want to bring to our class, our passion. And then you'll notice that on the faces, there are two different expressions. On the left, you see somebody representing the idea that learning should be joyful. It should feel good and we should be proud of what we do. However, there are times when things aren't fun. Learning is a grind, and during those times we show grit and determination to keep going. That's why we see the beads of sweat. We show the battery. That represents the idea that we all want to be battery chargers, people who bring energy and ideas and make the class better by their sheer presence and spirit. Now, this past year, I didn't want to repeat the same type of visual because I want each class to have its own identity and feel like they're getting something special. And I've seen this album cover for a band called People in Planes. Now, if you just step back and take a look at it, you just see broad areas of color. But as you look closer and closer, you see amazing detail. And I've seen a lot of other pictures like this beyond album covers. So my students and I went in that direction. Even though it seems overwhelming, the kids took to it very well. And it ended up looking like this. Instead of having a staircase to represent our quest to level up, it's climbing up a mountain. So we have HQ at the top. We have the infinity sign to show that there really is no endpoint. We see the signs going on the right side going from just okay all the way to best of the best, because we don't want to be just okay. We want to be best of the best. That's in our mission statement. On the bottom, we have a ladder to the top, but we exit out because we're a class that doesn't take shortcuts. On the left, we see the water bottle. One of our favorite phrases in our mission statement this past year is that we fill our water bottles at recess, but we fill our inspiration bottles all day long. And that's a fantastic idea. So we represented that on the mountain. We see a whole bunch of kids working together, grabbing hands or standing next to each other. Now, what look like barbells are actually obstacles. And sometimes we have to overcome obstacles to get to the top. So we're climbing over them. And then we have the clock to show that we are doing our best work, and there are other parts as well, but you get the message. Once the mission statement and visual are done, it's important to celebrate it and advertise these messages. So we have the t-shirt. Our class t-shirt has the visual each year. And I know teachers love having class t-shirts, and sometimes they'll put their name or the kids' names, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I believe that t-shirts are great real estate that we need to use to promote our message and represent what our team stands for. So that's where I like to put the visual. And then we also have a wristband that gets passed around from one student to the next. Everybody gets it once before anybody gets it twice. And the message is that together everyone achieves more, so that anytime somebody notices a classmate representing our mission statement somehow, we have a little ceremony before recess. We pass along the wristband, we clap for them, and then we get it to the next person, hopefully within the next week or so. Another alternative for physical education instructors is to actually make the mission statement doing a physical activity. That way you're not sacrificing any movement that you need to do. There's a great chance of camouflaging fitness as you create some form of mission statement or list of beliefs with your students. You can have a chart. You can have 5 charts, one with each of the questions that I mentioned earlier. Spread them throughout your multi-purpose room or spread them around a field. You can have huge distance between them so that kids in pairs need to get to all the charts to write down their answers to the questions, and then there'd be a direction on the bottom of each one saying, okay, skip to the next one, or hop to the next one, or sprint to the next one. So they're getting a great workout, but they're also brainstorming ideas for a mission statement. At EPEW, I also learned of an activity called Borrow It, which is in a spoken wheel format, where you can have sentence strips in the middle, and all the pairs or small groups would be spread out around the outside, and they could run up, grab a sentence strip that they like that represents the mission somehow, and then they can bring it back to their group, and they're collecting sentences that they want to put in the mission statement. Now on the bottom you see that you can combine ideas, so maybe the kids do that. Maybe you've taken great ideas and you've written them on new posters, or you just put out the old posters. Next you can give the kids dot stickers, and they only get a couple, so they select their favorite ideas when you're choosing which ones to include in your list or in your mission statement, and then they run around or do different locomotor moves to indicate which ideas are their favorite. So you can actually make it by using movement. Okay, moving along. A mission statement becomes a reference point. It's something that you use throughout the year and you keep coming back to. I've been in classes where the kids were really poorly behaved. I was visiting, and kids were really poorly behaved. Teacher called them up to the front of the room and was offering table points for the groups that were behaving better. So rather than having extrinsic rewards hold things together, we have ideas hold us together, and the mission statement is the best mission statement for doing that, reminding the kids what we committed to and what we need to do to get things back on track. Beyond the mission statement, it's important to have habits. Now, many schools already have lists of habits or traits or characteristics that they promote, and you can certainly use those if you have them. But if not, you can create your own. Noted educator Ted Sizer once said that knowing stuff is nice, being able to use it makes sense, but being predisposed to think and act in certain ways, always as a matter of habit, is the brass ring. It's the ultimate standard. So another great set of reference points that we want to build into our culture and keep coming back to throughout the year are habits. Now, this is a picture of part of the front left wall of my classroom. We have the aim at the top, and then the learning dovetails down to academic learning with the habits of mind, and then what I call character learning on the left with our habits of character. Depending on the age or grade level of your students, you would want to have more or fewer. In fourth grade, going through the 9 habits of mind and the 13 habits of character, there's one habit of character on the right that's not being shown, works perfectly. So I would, if you're new to this, I would start with a small number and then maybe increase throughout the year. You don't want to make the mistake of having too many at once and then having to cut throughout the year. Always better to start small and build from there. So that is the final reference point that I want to talk about. Now we're moving into symbols and rituals, because we want to do things to keep the ideas in our mission statement going. We want to present them in different ways, and we want to get the kids excited about it. So the first one I want to share with you is the quote of the day. And this is by far one of the more powerful ways to build a culture in class. For many years, I collected quotes that connected to different habits of character. And a couple mornings a week, we'll put one on the board. I'll ask a student to read it to the class as part of our morning circle. Then they have some quote-unquote quiet think time to figure out what the quote means to them and come up with examples of how it applies to their lives or our life in school. And then kids will share their thoughts. Volunteers will share with the class. Then I'll always share at the end. By doing that every morning, it brings out the best in us. There's a high tone to the dialogue. And since we are talking about behavior and it's first thing in the morning, nobody feels like they're being put on the spot for something they just got caught doing. This is a proactive attempt to have wonderful discussions about high-level ideas. Now, after compiling a whole bunch of them and coming up with talking points that I like to use with students, I put them into this book, and I don't mean this to share this to promote it, but I believe in it so much, and many people from EPEW have told me throughout the years that they use it with their own students. And if you're somebody who likes using quotes, then this is something you might want to check out. Here's an example of it. One of the first days of this school year that we do quotes, we'll look at this one because it helps build the idea that we never settle. Whatever we do, we give our best effort every day, all the time. It helps us build a culture of high expectations. So little by little, these discussions of mission statements and quotes can take us where we want to go. One day I was talking about equivalent fractions with my students, and I noticed that we use it in a lot of ways. It was so important. I said to them, it's so important that it's almost like we have a 31st student in my class. And I thought of Quest Field in Seattle, where they think the fans are so important. It's almost like having a 12th player on the field, so they have the 12th man flag. So we made a 31st student flag. So every time we talked about equivalent fractions, I would wave it around. Kids would love it. They get a kick out of it. It was novel. It was silly. But they paid extra close attention to the lessons on equivalent fractions. So that became an important symbol in our class. It was a very easy way to have the kids pay better attention to the important messages I was trying to send. Another one was the defense sign, which is great when you're watching a football game that's 60-56, because I'm not sure if the the defense is going to come through at the end of the game. So I bought one of these signs that is sold on NFL.com. And I mentioned to the kids that if you're playing sports, it's fun to shoot the ball, it's fun to score, but playing defense isn't always as fun. It's more of a grind. We have to pay attention to detail and be willing to do the little things that aren't fun or glamorous in order to be successful. So I put this sign, I bought the sign and I put it on our wall, and it now is a symbol of our class's commitment to the grind and the nitty gritty details that we need to do in order to be successful that aren't always fun. Many kids sketch this sign at the top of their math papers during assessments, and it inspires them. And some kids have even done better since they started doing that. So you never know where symbols are going to take us. This is the challenge bear. My friend Ginny, during a session many years ago at EPEW, pointed out to me kindly that it's a gorilla, but in my eyes, it's always going to be the challenge bear. What we did in class was put a little sash across, like a beauty pageant sash, with the word challenge. Now, another idea I try to build into the culture of the class is that we want to embrace challenges. We want to do difficult things. They help us get better and stronger. It's how we grow. We don't want to hide from them. So anytime somebody's feeling a little shy about taking on a challenge, they're welcome to come over and give the challenge bear a squeeze. It's a lighthearted gesture, but it really does help build the culture. So I'm sharing a few examples, but I encourage you to come up with your own. If you think of something you want to build into the culture, is there a way you can do it by using a symbol? Signs are great. We have a Work Like a Champion Today sign in our classroom. It's modeled after the Play Like a Champion sign above the Notre Dame locker room entrance. And one thing I wanted to point out today is that at my school, where we don't have full-time credential PE coaches, we have aides who take the kids out to PE. If kids are sick or injured, I often see them sitting way off to the side, not really doing anything. And if there's more than one, they'll just be fooling around. And I think it's a wasted opportunity. So if you don't already do this, I strongly suggest that if you have students who are unable to participate, they can still stand next to everybody else, like off to the side of the court or the field. They can hold up a sign and they can encourage everybody. You can have a few signs printed. That's a great use of their time. They feel more included, and it's inspiring people. You can also give them a clipboard and have them walk around listening for what other kids are saying. The people with the clipboard can write down compliments, examples of the different habits of character, any behavior that exemplifies the mission statement, and you can share that at the end of class. So that's an excellent use of the time of the kids who might not be able to participate. Moving on, because time is beginning to fly by here. The next topic is team and individual. During my first year of teaching, I had a mentor teacher sit down next to me when she saw the student leader certificate on the wall. And she said, yeah, you can help individuals, but it's so important to focus on a team, as if it was an either or situation. I've always viewed it as a mutually enriching situation where you want to have kids have individual recognition and strong self-esteem while also having strong teamwork and strong quote-unquote group esteem. So one way to do that is by using a construct by William Glasser, who I mentioned earlier. He says that all human behavior is an attempt to satisfy one of these 5 basic needs. Sometimes kids are misbehaving in class, but they're really trying to satisfy one of these needs. They're just not doing it in an appropriate way. So we can talk with them about what they did and what they might do better. This is a great set of ideas to think about because it puts us, I can speak for myself, it puts me in a better frame of mind, and it helps me understand that sometimes when kids are doing things that they're not supposed to, it's not all bad. They're trying to accomplish something powerful, and we can guide them to make better choices. And the goal for all of us is to create classrooms that are needs satisfying, where kids like to come because they're able to have fun, make choices, feel powerful, and connect with their friends. Another example is what I call the Metallica principle, and many people freak out when they hear that because they think I'm suggesting playing loud heavy metal music in class every day, which wouldn't actually be a bad thing. But a few years ago, I was watching a documentary on VH1 about Metallica, and lead singer James Hetfield was talking about a time in the band's development when he was pretty much tightly controlling everybody else's performance. He wrote all the words, he wrote all the instrumental parts. He was basically telling everybody what to play and how to play. And it didn't go very well. There was a lot of tension in the group. And he said he learned that for the band to be its best, everybody's got to be happy. They've got to play what they want. They've got to have some say in what they're playing and how they're playing. so that as the individuals in the group are happy and satisfied, the team itself becomes stronger. That can be a difficult balance to achieve, but it's the direction that we want to go in. One really interesting example was featured in the Last Dance documentary that you might have seen in recent weeks and months. There was an episode about Dennis Rodman, and he was a different personality on the team. And there was one time when he jetted off to Vegas because he just needed time away from the group, and almost no coach would allow that to happen. But Phil Jackson realized that Dennis Rodman was a special player and with a special personality or a different personality. So he was okay with Rodman going for a couple days. Then they ended up bringing him back, and then Rodman appreciated it, worked hard. He got back his conditioning, and ended up being a great contributor to another championship season for the Bulls. So I'm not suggesting that we let our kids jet off to Vegas at recess if they promise to be back by lunch the next day. However, sometimes there are kids who just need a little extra rope. They need a little extra freedom. They're with us, but they're just cut out of a different cloth, and we want to be flexible and adaptable and accommodating so that the kids are having their needs satisfied in the context of a team. I know that was more of an extreme example. Okay, another way to have the kids feel like they are part of the group is to give them quote unquote their own thing. Why do we do this? Because it puts smiles on their faces and ours. It guarantees personal positive attention, and kids don't always receive that in all their classes, so it's important that we provide it as much as possible. These things are often lighthearted and playful, and they bond us with the kids and bond kids with one another. So, one example is a girl in my class who always sat in the front row on the rug during lessons, but she had the tendency to drift off. And it's something she and I talked about a lot, and her learning was really suffering because she wasn't getting the information she needed to hear during lessons. And she was often lethargic. So I gave her a nickname. I asked if it was okay if I started calling her Spark. And she said, yeah. So I love the name because it exemplified the active approach that I wanted her to develop as a student. Now, did this solve all of her difficulties? No. But did she sit with more energy and pay better attention more often than she was before? Absolutely, she did. Plus, it kept things more positive, and I would speak with her a lot because it's hard to be upset with somebody when you're calling them Spark. Another example is a boy, Dylan, who had the tendency from time to time each day during independent seat work at his desk to put his pencil down, put his head on his desk, and just rest. And he and I developed a system that didn't distract the other kids, so it's good management. I would whisper his name. I would say, Dylan. He would look at me. I would pretend to throw him a fake energy bar. He would pretend to catch it and eat it, and then he went back to work. He did great for the rest of the period. It's silly, and it's something that bonded Dylan and me, and it worked. So sometimes it's a joke, sometimes it's a signal, and these little things can be very helpful. Now, you may be saying, I teach all these classes, there's no way I can do this for each student, and I totally understand that point. What I would suggest is to focus on the kids who need it the most, the kids who may not feel connected to the group, the kids who may not participate as much. If we start with them and then build from there, then I think that's a really good way of approaching it. In my experience, some kids need a little more than that because they come from really difficult situations. I had a student a few years ago who came from he was having a lot of difficulty with his home life, and his effort level at school was not always very high, and he wasn't engaged. But I knew he loved football, so that bonded us. And his favorite player was Marshawn Lynch, who, when he was at his best, was in beast mode. So I decided to make him a visual with Marshawn Lynch on the left with the Seahawks logo on top, and then Jonathan Butler's not the boy's real name, but I've published this, and I didn't want to put the picture of my own student. I just found that image online. So I put my student's name on the bottom with his picture with our team name at the top, and I gave him the visual, hoping that seeing him side by side with his favorite football player would inspire him. And I remember being a little nervous the day I gave it to him because he didn't often show emotion. He didn't react. So I gave it to him. I didn't really say anything, but I noticed that throughout the day, anytime he worked in a different part of the room, he took the visual with him. And at the end of the day, even though his desk tended to be messy, the visual was always front and center on the top of his desk, and he really took good care of it. Now, did that eliminate his difficulties? No. But did it help him do a little better and inspire him a bit? Yeah, it did until the end of the year. So when he was in his own version of beast mode, I felt good that creating a visual that mattered to him, because I'm not sure if people like give him special things very often. So he liked it and it worked for him. Finally, I want to talk about the topic of leadership. It is so important to develop leaders. If you learn about the most successful sports teams, it's not always the coach who takes the leadership for making sure the team does what it needs to be doing. I've heard a lot of stories about Tom Brady in New England, how if the players are not doing what they need to be doing in practice, he didn't wait for the position coach or for the head coach or the coordinators to tell the guys what they needed to do. I mean, he got right up in their face. Not that we want the kids to do that, but he was holding everybody accountable. And as the group holds one another accountable, that's how teams get truly strong, when they don't need the teacher to be the one to take charge all the time. Now, that's a lot to ask for young kids, but we can encourage it to the greatest degree that they're able to do it, and good things are going to happen. One of the highlights of my last 5 years of my teaching career happened during picture day one year, and I made a mistake because I'm usually the first person in a line to take individual pictures so that I can go outside the auditorium first and be there when all the other kids are done so that we can line up for our group picture. So I forgot all about that one year. And then when it was my turn to take the individual picture, there are already about 10 students who are already outside, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, are they going to be totally out of control when I get out there? Is this going to be a bad scene? Well, when I got out there, I saw 8 kids already in line in height order and 2 kids putting them in line. And a parent of a former student was out there, and she asked the 2 kids what they were doing. And a little girl named Samantha said, quote, our mission statement talks about leadership, and we're showing leadership right now. And when I heard that, I was like, wow, that is just an all-time life moment. That an idea that we had in our mission statement stuck in their head, and the kids put it into practice when they needed it. So as much as we can have kids given opportunities, whether it's setting up equipment, taking down equipment, helping organize activities, helping lead groups, whatever we can create for them, it is going to pay off, because leadership is in such demand these days, and it's such an important set of skills for kids to develop. We want to do whatever we can to facilitate that. So I am going to wrap up now. Here's my contact info. Please feel free to get in touch if there's any way I could be of further assistance, and I wish you a great rest of your workshop. Thank you.
Thank you for watching this session from EPEW 2020. We're saving the next few minutes for you to ask those final questions before we log off. If you have any questions afterwards, please reach out to the presenter or send a message to EPEW through our website.
Don't forget that we have more amazing sessions going on. Head over to our website, epew-cp.weebly.com, and look for the virtual EPEW 2020 tab.
You can also access the presentations on YouTube by typing in the hashtag EPEW 2020.
We'd like to thank the amazing EPEW committee for all their hard work over this past year. This event would not have been possible without their dedication, commitment, and volunteering their time to providing high-quality professional development.
Don't forget about our other events like our socials and share times. Links can be found on our website.
Remember our motto for EPEW: come to learn, leave as family. Thank you for joining our family today.